Trash like you doesn't even get to breathe the same air as me." The words, sharp as shattered glass, cut through the idyllic afternoon buzz at the Serenity Grand, San Diego's most exclusive resort. Isabella Vance, a woman sculpted from old money and casual cruelty, held her martini glass like a scepter, her perfectly manicured fingers gesturing dismissively. She glared down at the young black woman kneeling at her feet, who was carefully blotting a spilled cocktail from her $1,000 alligator skin heels. "Clean my shoe, and don't you dare make eye contact when you do it." The woman on the ground, Maya Jordan, looked up, her expression a calm, unreadable mask. "I sincerely apologize, ma'am. Let me get that for you." "Don't look at me!" Isabella shrieked, the venom in her voice turning heads across the sprawling, sun-drenched pool deck. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial, poisonous whisper. "Maybe this will teach you some respect for your betters." Without another word, she placed both of her hands flat on Maya's shoulders and shoved. Hard. The splash was a gunshot in the tranquil afternoon. It echoed across the resort as Maya tumbled backward, a swirl of black uniform and shocked surprise, into the crystal-clear turquoise water of the infinity pool. A collective gasp rippled through the wealthy patrons. For a split second, there was silence. Then, almost in unison, a dozen smartphones were raised, their cameras greedily recording the scene. The spectacle had begun. Isabella dusted off her hands with a theatrical flourish of disgust, a queen dismissing a fly. "That's what happens," she announced to her captivated audience, "when these people get a little too familiar." 3 hours. 3 hours until the quarterly board meeting. The thought was an anchor in the storm of Maya's mind. The chlorine burned her eyes as she surfaced, pushing soaked strands of hair from her face. She pulled herself from the pool with a slow, deliberate grace, water cascading from her cheap polyester uniform. Her plastic name tag, reading simply Maya, floated near the edge, bobbing next to a pair of Isabella's discarded designer sunglasses like two pieces of evidence from a crime scene. Around the deck, the screens of the guests glowed, little windows of opportunity. "Oh my God, Chloe, did you get that?" One woman squealed to her friend, her thumb already hitting the Go Live button on Instagram. The viewer count began to climb, a frantic digital pulse. 1,000, 2,000. This was going viral, and everyone knew it. Maya wrung out the hem of her shirt, her movements measured and precise, betraying the violent trembling in her hands. The humiliation was a physical thing, a cold weight in her gut, but it was also familiar. A memory, sharp and unwelcome, hit her like a slap. 5 years ago, standing in a different 5-star lobby, hearing a different voice spit the same poison. "People like you don't belong here." That moment had been the catalyst. She had returned to this world not as a victim, but as a scientist, to understand the system from the inside out. The hotel manager, Richard Fleming, scurried toward the scene, a mask of feigned concern plastered on his face. At 45, he had mastered the corporate art of appearing professional, while serving only power and profit. "Maya, are you all right? What on earth happened here?" Before she could form a syllable, Isabella's voice, dripping with manufactured outrage, sliced through the air. "Your employee assaulted me. She deliberately threw her tray of drinks on my brand new shoes and then became aggressive when I asked her to clean it up properly." Richard's expression flickered. His eyes darted from Maya's soaking form to Isabella's wrist, where a platinum VIP band gleamed, a silent testament to presidential suites, unlimited spa credits, and the kind of money that made management tremble. His spine visibly straightened, a soldier recognizing a 5-star general. "I see." His tone dropped 10 degrees. "Maya, perhaps it's best if you go home and change. We will discuss this incident tomorrow." She should be fired, immediately. Isabella's voice had the unmistakable ring of someone who had never been denied anything in her life. I have never, ever been treated with such blatant disrespect. Do you have any idea who I am? 20 feet away, Miguel, a young pool attendant, continued his methodical work of skimming leaves from the water's surface. But Maya saw it. She saw the slight, almost imperceptible angle of his phone, propped against his cart, its lens aimed directly at their conversation. Smart kid. Mrs. Vance is one of our most valued and respected guests, Richard explained to Maya, his voice now a low, patronizing whisper, as if explaining a complex concept to a child. Her husband's corporate account spent over $250,000 here in the last 6 months alone. As if on cue, a small waterlogged notebook slipped from Maya's apron pocket and slapped onto the wet concrete. Its pages, filled with 11 months of meticulous, handwritten observations, began to bleed ink. 11 months of data, guest behavior patterns, staff response times, management's complicity in microaggressions, all of it was dissolving into a chlorinated blue smudge. She bent down and picked it up, pressing the soggy pages together with a tenderness that seemed bizarrely out of place. I understand completely, Mr. Fleming. Her calm, almost clinical response seemed to unnerve Richard more than a flood of tears would have. Employees were supposed to crumble. They were supposed to beg, to panic. Maya's composure felt alien, dangerous. It hinted at something he couldn't possibly comprehend. Elena, a veteran housekeeper with eyes that had seen 30 years of this resort's secrets, appeared at Maya's side with a thick hotel towel. Her weathered hands were gentle as she wrapped it around Maya's trembling shoulders. "Mija," she whispered in Spanish, her voice thick with concern. "Why are you so calm? This is a disgrace." "I've seen worse, Elena," Maya murmured back, her eyes meeting the older woman's. "This is exactly what I was expecting." Elena's eyes widened. After 3 decades of cleaning up the messes of the rich and powerful, she knew the difference between the shock of a victim and the readiness of a soldier. "Security to the main pool deck," Richard spoke into his shoulder radio, his authority bolstered by Isabella's smug, approving nod. "We need an escort for a terminated employee." Chloe's Instagram Live was now a raging inferno of comments. Shakors. Karen strikes again. Fought for space with fire that ghetto waitress now. The algorithm, a beast that fed on human conflict, was pushing the video to tens of thousands of screens across the country. "Just wait until my husband hears about this," Isabella announced loudly to her friends, a clear threat meant for everyone to overhear. "James has connections throughout the entire hospitality industry. This girl won't be able to get a job scrubbing toilets in a motel after he's done with her." Maya's phone, miraculously still functional in its waterproof case, buzzed with a text. She glanced at the screen. "How's the research going, Dr. Jordan?" She typed back a quick reply, her fingers moving with purpose. "Marcus. Pattern confirmed. Systemic failure documented. The catalyst event is in progress." "Who are you texting?" Isabella demanded, stepping forward with an air of entitlement that suggested she had the right to know. "Your boyfriend? Your parole officer?" The crowd of onlookers had swelled, drawn by the drama like sharks to blood in the water. Some filmed openly now, their faces grimly fascinated. Others whispered behind manicured hands. A few, a precious few, looked deeply uncomfortable. But their silence was a form of complicity, a quiet endorsement wrapped in designer silk. "Actually," Maya said, slipping the phone back into her pocket, her voice steady and clear. "I was texting my research partner. We've been conducting a study on workplace discrimination for the past year." Isabella let out a laugh. a sound like fine crystal shattering on a marble floor. A study? Honey, the only thing you should be studying is the proper way to serve your betters. Richard's radio crackled to life. Security is en route to your location. ETA 2 minutes. The young assistant manager, Sarah, arrived first, breathless and eager to please. Fresh out of a prestigious hospitality school, her brain was filled with textbook theories that prioritized guest satisfaction and profit above all else, especially human dignity. Mrs. Vance, I am so sorry you had to experience this, Sarah gushed, her eyes wide with frantic apology. We will ensure this employee is dealt with appropriately. Dealt with? Isabella's eyebrow arched into a perfect, disdainful curve. She should be arrested for assault. Look at my shoes. They're ruined. These cost more than she makes in a month. Maya, ignoring them, continued to take notes in her damaged notebook, her pen scratching against the damp paper. She recorded the exact quotes, the timestamps, the reactions of the witnesses. This data, this pure, unadulterated evidence of the system in action, would be invaluable. Ma'am, you can't take notes during a disciplinary hearing, Sarah protested, her voice laced with the unearned confidence of a new graduate. Actually, I can, Maya replied, her voice remaining placid. It's not a violation of any state or federal employment law. The comment hung in the humid air like a dare. How in the world did a poolside waitress know the intricacies of employment law? 2 security guards, Leo and Mike, arrived. Both were built like linebackers, but they moved with the practiced, weary restraint of men who had seen it all. They dealt in facts and de-escalation, not corporate politics. What's the situation, Richard? Leo asked, his eyes scanning the scene. Employee misconduct, Richard said, his voice firming up now that he had backup. She needs to be escorted off the property while we conduct a full investigation. Isabella pointed a dramatic, trembling finger at Maya. She assaulted me, she destroyed my property, and now she's harassing me with that ridiculous notebook. I want her banned from these premises for life. The Instagram comments scrolled faster than the eye could read. Eintrim, Justice for Maya was now battling Surstrand for fire her now. The resort's Yelp and Google review pages were already being carpet-bombed. 1-star ratings appeared like a digital plague. Richard's phone buzzed with notifications from the social media team, alerting him to the viral catastrophe unfolding in real time. The blood drained from his face as he finally grasped the sheer magnitude of the situation. Maya, you need to come with us, Leo said quietly. We'll sort this out back in the office. As they walked away from the pool and toward the main hotel building, Maya made one last careful note in her book. Subject exhibits classic narcissistic power dynamics when challenged by a perceived lower status individual. Escalates to physical aggression to reassert dominance. Behind them, Isabella held court, retelling her version of the story to her sycophantic friends, each retelling adding new layers of drama and heroism on her part. The way she looked at me, so insolent, as if she thought she was my equal. 2 hours and 45 minutes until the board meeting. The HR office smelled of artificial air freshener and quiet desperation. Maya sat across a polished mahogany desk from Eleanor Vance, a black woman in her late 50s whose kind, weary eyes couldn't quite mask the institutional loyalty etched into her features. On the desk between them lay a stack of termination paperwork, ominously blank. Maya, honey, I've been in this job for 20 years, Eleanor began, her voice carrying the heavy weight of 1,000 compromises. I have seen good people, good workers, lose everything over situations just like this. Through the large window behind Eleanor, they could see Isabella by the pool, still performing, her animated gestures growing more and more theatrical as she recounted her victory. Her audience of wealthy wives nodded along, their judgment already rendered. Tell me what really happened, Eleanor continued, her pen hovering over the official incident report. Maya placed her waterlogged notebook on the desk. The pages were still damp, but the ink, for the most part, was legible. Before the pool incident even occurred, I had already documented 17 separate instances of discriminatory behavior from various guests and staff just today. Would you care to see the data? Eleanor blinked. Terminated employees were supposed to beg, cry, or make threats. They didn't reference data. Data? Maya, you're a waitress. I'm conducting ethnographic research on discrimination patterns within the luxury hospitality industry, Maya stated, turning to a page marked with precise timestamps. Mrs. Vance's behavior, in fact, follows a predictable escalation pattern that we've observed across 23 different establishments in our study. The older woman leaned back in her chair, a flicker of confusion replacing her rehearsed compassion. We? What are you talking about? Before Maya could elaborate, the office door burst open, and Richard Fleming stormed in, his face flushed with a rising tide of panic. Eleanor, we have a major problem. The video has hit Twitter. Serenity Grand Assault is trending nationally. He thrust his phone toward them. The shaky footage, now edited together from 3 different guests' angles, showed Isabella's shove in undeniable clarity. The comment sections were a raging war. This is a hate crime fought, with that waitress got what she deserved. The battle lines were drawn along the predictable, fractured landscape of American society. How bad is it? Eleanor asked, though the terror in Richard's eyes already told her the answer. We're getting booking cancellations by the minute. The main switchboard is jammed with complaint calls. Corporate is on the line, and they are demanding answers. He paced the small office like a caged, terrified animal. And Mrs. Vance is now threatening to sue us for emotional distress if we don't fire Maya and issue a public apology to her immediately. Maya, unperturbed, continued writing in her notebook, her pen scratching across the damp paper. She noted Richard's panicked body language, Eleanor's conflicted expression, the grinding gears of the institutional machinery as it lurched toward its predetermined, profit-driven conclusion. What in God's name are you writing now? Richard snapped, his composure finally shattering. Observing how management responds to legal pressure versus moral obligation, she replied, her clinical tone making the hairs on his arm stand up. It's quite fascinating from a sociological perspective. Richard lunged for the notebook, but Maya pulled it back with a smooth, practiced motion. That's my private property. Not on company time, it isn't. Actually, she began, under California labor law. Stop, Richard's voice cracked. Just stop with the legal talk. You're a waitress, not a damn lawyer. The unspoken assumption, a black waitress, hung in the air between them like thick smoke. Eleanor shifted uncomfortably in her chair, recognizing the very dangerous territory they were now entering. Sarah, the assistant manager, appeared in the doorway, clutching her tablet like a life raft. Mr. Fleming, Mrs. Vance is on the phone. She's demanding to speak with you. She says if Maya isn't terminated within the next hour, her husband is pulling their entire corporate account from all Serenity Grand properties, nationwide. How much is that account worth, Sarah? Eleanor asked quietly. $5.3 million. Annually, Sarah whispered. The number landed in the room like a judge's gavel. The case was closed. Eleanor's pen moved with grim finality toward the termination papers. Maya's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. The car is 5 minutes out. It's time. She typed a quick reply. Marcus, I have everything we need. Proceed. Richard caught a glimpse of the screen. Who is Marcus? Is your boyfriend coming down here to cause more trouble? He's my research partner, Maya said, and for the first time, a small but unmistakable smile touched her lips. We've been studying this particular system for 11 months. Today is simply the day we publish our findings. The quiet confidence in her voice sent a chill crawling up Richard's spine. Waitresses didn't have research partners. Waitresses had drama and boyfriends and problems. Outside, Miguel knocked on the office window. He held up his phone and pointed urgently toward the hotel's grand circular driveway. A sleek, black Maybach, the kind that screamed not just wealth but dynastic power, was pulling up to the entrance. "Looks like your ride is here," Richard said with a dismissive sneer. "Security will escort you to the locker room to collect your personal items." Eleanor paused, her pen still hovering over the signature line. Something about Maya's unnerving calm told her she was missing a very large, very important piece of the puzzle. 20 years in HR had taught her to trust her gut. "Maya," she said, her voice dropping, "before we finalize anything here, is there something you need to tell us?" The question was a lifeline, a chance for Maya to end the charade, to reveal everything and protect herself. Instead, she slowly closed her notebook and stood up. "I think my documentation speaks for itself." She reached into her wallet and pulled out a business card, somehow still crisp and dry after its dip in the pool. She slid it across the desk to Eleanor. "But you might find this interesting." Eleanor picked up the card. Her eyes scanned the elegant, embossed text, and then they went wide with disbelief. She read it again, mouthing the words, "Dr. Maya Jordan, PhD. Organizational Psychology, Stanford University." Richard snatched the card from her hand, studying it as if it were a forgery. "This is a joke. This is fake. You're trying to scam us." "The Stanford University registrar can verify my credentials," Maya said calmly, "along with my 47 published peer-reviewed papers on systemic bias in corporate environments." Sarah's tablet clattered to the floor. "My work has appeared in the Journal of Applied Psychology, the Harvard Business Review, and the Academy of Management Review," Maya recited, her tone as matter-of-fact as if she were reading a grocery list. "My specific specialty is documenting systemic discrimination in the service and hospitality industries." Eleanor rose slowly from her chair, the pieces of the puzzle crashing together in her mind with the force of a tectonic shift. "You've been conducting an undercover academic study, here, for 11 months, with full documentation, multiple witnesses, and legal representation." Maya straightened her still damp uniform. "Today," she said, "was simply the culmination of a very comprehensive, long-term study, the final data point." Richard's face cycled through a kaleidoscope of colors, white, red, a sickly green. "You can't. This is entrapment." "Actually, it's ethnographic immersion research," she corrected. "Perfectly legal when conducted in public spaces with the proper institutional review board oversight." Through the window, they watched a man exit the Maybach. He was tall, powerfully built, and wore a custom-tailored suit that probably cost more than Sarah's car. Even from 100 yards away, his presence radiated an aura of absolute command. Hotel staff straightened their postures unconsciously. Guests turned to stare. "And that," Maya said, checking her watch, "would be my research partner and husband, Dr. Marcus Thorne. Perhaps you've heard of him." Sarah let out a small, strangled gasp. Everyone had heard of him. Marcus Thorne, the legendary founder and CEO of Thorne Global Enterprises, the multi-billion-dollar private equity firm that owned a staggering 12% of the luxury hotel market in Southern California. The corporate titan currently in the final stages of negotiating acquisitions throughout the entire state. The man who could build empires or crush them with a single phone call. Richard's face went as white as a fresh hotel bedsheet. "Impossible," he whispered, the word barely audible. "You're just a waitress." Maya picked the blank termination papers off the desk and handed them back to Eleanor. "I think," she said with a cool, final smile, You're going to want to reconsider this decision." Outside, Marcus Thorne strode toward the hotel entrance, his presence causing ripples of recognition and panic among the staff. The doorman, a man who greeted celebrities and billionaires daily, nearly tripped over his own feet, rushing to open the door. And by the pool, Isabella Vance, still basking in the glow of her victory, remained blissfully, dangerously unaware that her 15 minutes of fame were about to become a lifetime of infamy. Should we call Mrs. Vance?" Sarah stammered, her voice trembling. Maya gathered her precious, waterlogged notebook, each page a testament to a year of quiet observation. "Oh, I wouldn't worry about Mrs. Vance," she said. "She's about to receive a very, very thorough education." 1 hour and 30 minutes until the board meeting. The grand lobby of the Serenity Grand fell into a hushed, reverent silence as Marcus Thorne entered. His custom Italian suit seemed to absorb the light from the massive crystal chandeliers and reflect it back as pure power. At 6'3", with the first hints of silver at his temples, he moved with the quiet, predatory grace of a man who had never once needed to raise his voice to command a room. The doorman's hands were visibly shaking. "Good afternoon, Mr. Thorne. We weren't expecting you today, sir." "It was a last-minute visit," Marcus replied, his smile polite but utterly devoid of warmth. "I'm here to see my wife." The word wife detonated in the marble-floored lobby like a bomb. Whispers erupted and spread like wildfire as staff and guests alike tried to process the impossible implication. The wives of billionaires did not work as poolside waitresses, unless, of course, something extraordinary was happening. Out on the pool deck, Isabella continued her performance, completely oblivious to the seismic shift in power that was occurring just 50 yards away. The way she looked at me, Chloe, so insolent, like she thought she was somebody important. Chloe held her phone higher, her live stream audience growing by the second, all of them hungry for the next chapter. The comments were a frenzy of speculation. "Wait, is that Marcus Thorne walking into the hotel? OMG, he's heading for the pool!" Back in the HR office, Eleanor's hands trembled as she fed the termination papers into the shredder. Richard stared blankly through the window, watching his 20-year career dissolve in the bright afternoon sun. "We need to stop this," he muttered, fumbling for his radio. "Stop what?" Maya asked, her tone one of genuine curiosity. "A husband coming to check on his wife?" Sarah was now backed against a filing cabinet, her face pale, her hospitality school textbooks having offered no chapter on how to handle the accidental termination of a billionaire's spouse. "This can't be happening," she whispered. "This isn't real." Marcus's path to the pool was like a royal procession. Staff members emerged from hidden offices, guests abandoned their lounge chairs, everyone drawn to witness the impending collision. The resort's comfortable, predictable rhythm had stuttered to a halt. Miguel, the pool attendant, saw him first. He instantly recognized the man whose charitable foundation had funded his younger sister's full engineering scholarship to USC. "Mr. Thorne." He jogged over, his own phone still recording. "Sir, I have footage. I have video of everything that happened to your wife." "Thank you, Miguel," Marcus said, his expression darkening as he took the phone and watched the clear, damning footage of Isabella shoving Maya into the water. "This will be very useful." Elena, the housekeeper, appeared at his elbow, her face a mask of righteous indignation. "Senor Thorne, they treated her like she was garbage. That woman, she pushed your wife in the water like she was nothing." "Where is my wife now?" Marcus's voice remained dangerously calm, but a fire had ignited behind his eyes. "The HR office," Elena pointed. "They were going to fire her after what that bruja did." Marcus nodded his thanks and continued his inexorable advance toward the pool. The wealthy guests began to recognize him now, a face from the covers of Forbes and the Wall Street Journal. More phones appeared, capturing his approach from a dozen different angles. Isabella, oblivious, threw back her head and laughed at some witty embellishment she'd added to her story. I told her, "Know your place. Some people just need to be reminded where they belong in the grand scheme of things." Her friends nodded along, their agreement automatic, their thoughts unburdened by originality. One of them, Chloe, raised her martini glass in a toast. "To putting the help in their place. To putting people in their place." The voice was quiet, yet it cut through their self-congratulatory celebration like a surgeon's scalpel. Isabella spun around, nearly dropping her drink. Her face cycled through a series of expressions: confusion, then a flicker of recognition, and finally, a calculating predatory charm. "Oh, Mr." She extended a hand, her entire demeanor shifting into one of syrupy southern grace. "Williams. Jonathan Williams, isn't it?" He didn't take her hand. "It's Thorne, Marcus Thorne, and I believe you've already met my wife." The words struck Isabella with the force of a physical blow. Her carefully constructed world of privilege and power began to fracture. The waitress she had publicly humiliated, the woman she had shoved into a pool of chlorinated water, the help she had so cavalierly put in her place. "Your wife?" The words came out as a pathetic squeak. "Dr. Maya Jordan," Marcus clarified. "She's been conducting research here for the past 11 months. He pulled out his own phone and displayed a photo from their wedding day. Maya, radiant and joyful in a designer gown, Marcus beaming beside her. "Perhaps you remember her from earlier today?" Chloe's live-stream viewership exploded past 50,000 as the impossible plot twist unfolded. The comment section went insane. The plot twist of the century. This is better than any reality show." Isabella's friends began to melt away like sugar in the rain, suddenly remembering urgent appointments elsewhere. Chloe mumbled something about needing to check on her children. Jessica kept filming, but took several large steps back, sensing the air was about to become dangerously charged. "There must be some mistake," Isabella stammered, her eyes darting around for an escape. "She's just a waitress. I saw her serving drinks." "She has a PhD from Stanford in organizational psychology," Marcus said, his tone still conversational, which made the words all the more devastating. "She's published 47 peer-reviewed papers on the subject of workplace discrimination. Currently, she's documenting systemic bias in the luxury hospitality industry." He gestured towards the HR office window, where Maya could now be seen, calmly speaking with Eleanor. "Today's incident will be featured quite prominently in her upcoming testimony before a congressional committee next month." Isabella's face drained of all color. Congressional testimony. "The Senate Labor Committee is taking a very keen interest in her research," Marcus continued, his smile as sharp and cold as a winter wind. "Particularly her findings on how management enables and protects discriminatory behavior from high-spending guests. Your performance today, Mrs. Vance, was remarkably illustrative." Richard Fleming burst from the hotel doors, flanked by the 2 security guards, his face glistening with sweat. He had clearly sprinted across the property. "Mr. Thorne, sir, there has been a terrible, terrible misunderstanding." Marcus shifted his glacial attention to the manager. "Richard Fleming, isn't it? I understand you were just about to terminate my wife's employment for the crime of being assaulted by one of your guests." "Sir, I had no idea who she was. If I had known—" "If you had known," Marcus interrupted, his question landing like a perfectly laid trap, "you would have treated her differently? Your standard of care is based on a person's marital connections and wealth, rather than their inherent dignity as a human being? Richard's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. He was a fish gasping on the hot, dry land of his own incompetence. Leo, the security guard, stepped forward, his training screaming at him that the situation was about to spiral out of control. "Sir, should we clear the area?" "No need, Leo," Marcus said, his voice carrying the calm authority of a man born to command. "Mrs. Vance was just explaining to me her personal philosophy about people, knowing their place." Isabella, desperate and cornered, found her voice. "Look, I'm sorry if I offended your wife, but she was being aggressive. I felt threatened." Miguel held up his phone, the video of the assault clearly visible on the screen. "Aggressive? She was on her knees cleaning up a mess when you put both your hands on her and pushed her into the pool." "That's not what happened." Isabella's composure finally shattered completely, revealing the raw, ugly prejudice beneath. "She was looking at me wrong. She was being uppity. I had to teach her some respect." The word, uppity, hung in the suddenly silent air like a poisonous fog. Even her last remaining friends visibly cringed. Marcus pulled out a tablet, swiping to a document marked with official-looking letterhead. "Mrs. Vance, you've just provided an excellent and very public confession for both the criminal assault charges my wife will be filing and the federal civil rights violation we will be pursuing." "Criminal charges?" Isabella's voice cracked. "Assault and battery, captured on dozens of cameras. With a hate crime enhancement, thanks to the clear racial motivation you just so helpfully admitted to," Marcus recited, his background in corporate law showing in every precise, devastating word. "The federal civil rights violation alone carries a maximum penalty of 10 years in prison." Sarah Lane appeared beside Richard, tablet clutched to her chest like a shield. "Mr. Thorne, sir, I'm sure we can resolve this internally. There's no need for legal action." "I'm afraid that decision isn't mine to make," Marcus said, gesturing toward the HR office where Maya was now standing. "My wife is the victim here, but I can tell you this. Thorne Global Enterprises takes the issue of discrimination very, very seriously." Richard's face went ashen. "We own and operate 847 hotels worldwide," Marcus continued conversationally, the sheer scale of his power a palpable force. "And we are, as you know, currently in the process of negotiating several major acquisitions throughout Southern California. This very property, in fact, was at the top of our acquisition list." The word was hung in the air like a death sentence. "Mr. Thorne, please, let me explain," Richard begged. "Explain what?" Marcus's voice was like chipping ice. "Explain how you immediately sided with a guest who had just assaulted an employee? Explain how you prepared termination papers without even conducting a proper investigation? Explain how you were about to destroy an innocent woman's reputation and livelihood simply to protect your profit margins?" Each question was a hammer blow. Richard stumbled backward, his authority, his career, his future, all evaporating in the hot San Diego sun. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from Maya. "How are things going out there, Dr. Thorne?" He typed back. "Educational. Eleanor is shredding termination papers. Richard appears to be having an existential crisis. The subject is proving every one of our hypotheses correct." Isabella, in a last desperate play, tried a new tactic. Her voice took on a pleading, conspiratorial tone. "Mr. Thorne, Marcus, my husband, James Vance, has significant investments throughout the hospitality sector. Perhaps you and he can work something out." "James Vance of Vance Capital Partners," Marcus said, his eyebrow arching slightly. "Interesting. They manage the pension fund for Thorne Global's West Coast employees. $300 million under management, if I recall correctly." Isabella's face lit up with a flicker of hope. "Yes, exactly. You see, we can resolve this, business to business." We could, Marcus agreed. Except Vance Capital just lost their largest client, effective immediately. The pronouncement hit Isabella like a physical shock. The loss of a $300 million account would cripple her husband's firm. Their lifestyle, their social standing, their entire future. It was all collapsing like a house of cards, right here, right now, in front of a live audience of 100,000 people. "You can't do that!" she shrieked, her voice raw with disbelief. "Over some waitress." "Over my wife?" Marcus's voice never rose, which only made it more terrifying. "Over human dignity? Over the systemic, unapologetic racism you have so proudly displayed for the entire world to see today? Actions have consequences, Mrs. Vance. Today, you are learning that lesson." Chloe's live stream hit 150,000 viewers as the corporate execution reached its climax. The comments were a digital coliseum, with the crowd roaring for blood. Through the HR office window, they could see Maya rising from her chair, her notebook tucked securely under her arm, looking not like a victim, but like a victor. Eleanor looked like a woman who had just been pulled from the path of a speeding train. Marcus checked his watch. "Dr. Jordan should be joining us shortly. I'm sure she'll want to document your response for her research." Isabella looked around wildly, a cornered animal searching for an escape route, for an ally. She found neither. The crowd of guests and staff had formed an impromptu tribunal, their phones held high, recording every humiliating moment for posterity. 20 minutes until the board meeting. Maya emerged from the hotel, her damp, cheap uniform now looking less like a mark of shame and more like a warrior's armor. She moved with the quiet, unshakable confidence of a person whose true power had finally been unleashed. Eleanor followed 2 steps behind her, clutching a folder of incident reports like a prosecutor presenting evidence. "Ah, Dr. Jordan," Marcus said, his voice warming with affection as she approached. "How did your documentation session go?" "Extraordinarily productive," Maya replied, opening her waterlogged notebook. The pages were filled with 11 months of data, a meticulous indictment of a broken system. She turned her calm gaze on Richard, who stood frozen, a statue of pure terror. "Mr. Fleming, I've analyzed your internal records. Your response time to high-value guest complaints versus employee-filed grievances shows a statistically significant bias. The average resolution time for a guest complaint is 4 minutes. Of the 14 discrimination reports filed by employees in the last year, none were ever resolved." Richard's mouth moved, but no sound emerged. How did she have access to internal metrics? Marcus brought up a new screen on his tablet, displaying a comprehensive presentation filled with charts and graphs that made Richard's blood run cold. "While my wife was documenting the microaggressions on the ground, I was analyzing the macroeconomics from above. Shall we review the numbers?" The screen glowed with the immediate financial fallout, updated in real time. Social media sentiment, down 73% in the last 3 hours. Booking cancellations, $2.4 million in projected lost revenue. Stock price of the parent corporation, down 4.7% since the video went viral. Corporate accounts threatening to withdraw. 12, totaling $8.3 million annually. "And these are conservative projections," Marcus explained conversationally. "The algorithm feeds on controversy. The peak of your brand damage hasn't even arrived yet." Sarah's tablet was buzzing incessantly with notifications. "Mr. Thorne, sir, our corporate office is on the line. They're receiving hundreds of calls a minute. The phone lines are completely jammed." "That would be our public relations team at Thorne Global," Marcus said with a thin smile. "They're remarkably efficient when it comes to protecting our company's interests and investments." Isabella, finding a last reserve of belligerence, found her voice. "This is extortion. You're destroying innocent people's lives over a simple misunderstanding." Maya looked up from her notes. "Mrs. Vance, You committed assault and battery while making racially motivated statements, all of which constitutes multiple felonies. That is not a misunderstanding. I never said anything racial. Miguel stepped forward, holding his phone out for all to see. Ma'am, you said, and I quote, "People like you should know your place, and that's what happens when these people get too familiar." It's all recorded. Chloe's live stream, now at a staggering 200,000 viewers, captured Isabella's face contorting with a rage born of pure panic. Those aren't racial statements. That's just proper social order. The admission, so blatant and unapologetic, sucked the remaining oxygen from the air. Marcus opened a new window on his tablet. Let's discuss proper social order, shall we? Thorn Global Enterprises employs over 84,000 people globally. 63% of them are ethnic minorities. Today, you assaulted one of our lead researchers and, in doing so, perfectly exposed the exact toxic culture we have been investigating. He turned his cold gaze back to Richard. Your own employee handbook states a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination, page 47, section 12.3. You have violated company policy, California state law, and multiple federal civil rights statutes. Richard scrambled for a defense. Mr. Thorne, I was simply following established hotel protocols. Mrs. Vance is a VIP guest. Was a VIP guest, Maya corrected, consulting her notes. A lifetime ban from all 847 Thorn Global properties and any future acquisitions will be implemented within the hour. You can't ban me! Isabella shrieked. I spend 6 figures a year on luxury hotels. Marcus's expression remained unchanged. Mrs. Vance, Thorn Global generates $43 billion in annual revenue. Your spending represents 0.00002% of our business. You are, to be blunt, financially irrelevant. The cold, mathematical precision of her own insignificance seemed to hit Isabella harder than any insult. She wasn't powerful. She wasn't important. She was just a rounding error. Eleanor, her loyalty finally finding its true north, stepped forward. Mr. Thorne, Dr. Jordan, on behalf of the employees of this hotel, I want to formally apologize. This never should have happened. Eleanor, you were placed in an impossible position by a flawed system, Maya said gently. Your 20-year employment record shows a consistent history of fairness and advocacy for employees, right up until today. The system failed you, not the other way around. The unexpected kindness in Maya's voice made Eleanor's eyes well up with tears. What? What happens now? Sarah asked, her voice a tiny whisper. Marcus consulted his watch. In exactly 12 minutes, this hotel's board of directors will convene for their quarterly meeting. The primary item on their agenda will be the final review of Thorn Global's acquisition proposal. Richard's face went completely gray. The acquisition, Marcus stated, his voice now booming with authority, is valued at $540 million for this property and its 12 sister hotels across the state. The due diligence period officially ends today. Unfortunately, today's events have raised some serious concerns about the existing corporate culture and potential legal liabilities. Sarah's voice came out as a strangled squeak. You're withdrawing the offer. That depends entirely on the board's response to our demands, Maya said, pulling a professionally printed document from her folder. We have prepared a comprehensive reform proposal. We're calling it the Thorn Protocol. She began to read the non-negotiable terms. Immediate personnel actions. Richard Fleming. Terminated for cause, for enabling discrimination, and creating a hostile work environment. Sarah Lane, suspended pending the completion of a mandatory 6-week bias and sensitivity training program. All remaining management to undergo mandatory discrimination prevention certification. Policy implementation. A zero-tolerance enforcement policy with automatic termination for violations. A new guest code of conduct with immediate removal from the property for any violations. Monthly third-party audits on compliance to be conducted by the Thorne Foundation. Financial accountability. A $100,000 donation to the NNAUBART-ACP Legal Defense Fund. A $50,000 investment in an ongoing employee bias training program. Victim compensation. Dr. Maya Jordan to be promoted to the newly created position of Director of Inclusive Guest Experience for the West Coast region at a salary of $150,000 per year. Systemic changes. A real-time incident reporting app for all employees with immediate escalation to corporate oversight, and public quarterly reports on diversity, inclusion, and incident metrics. Richard looked at the demands, his face a mask of disbelief. These terms, they're unprecedented. So was shoving a Stanford PhD into a swimming pool for being black, Marcus replied evenly. Isabella made one final, desperate gambit. My husband will never stand for this. James has lawyers who will tie you up in court for years. Maya looked up from her notes, where she had just been documenting Isabella's latest threat. Mrs. Vance, your husband's firm just lost a $300 million asset management contract. I suspect he's going to be rather busy explaining that to his partners and his remaining clients. A look of dawning horror spread across Isabella's face. You planned this. All of it. We conducted legitimate academic research, Maya corrected her. Your behavior was entirely your own. We simply created the conditions to document the systemic discrimination that already existed. Marcus's phone buzzed with an incoming call. Excuse me, he said. This will be the chairman of the board. He answered on speaker. Charles, good afternoon. I assume you've seen the social media coverage. The panicked, tinny voice of Charles Petty, the board chairman, crackled through the phone. Marcus, for God's sake, tell me we can resolve this situation. Our shareholders are in absolute crisis mode. That is entirely up to you, Charles, Marcus said. Dr. Jordan has just outlined a comprehensive and non-negotiable reform proposal. You can accept the Thorne Protocol in its entirety, and we will proceed with the acquisition as planned. Or you can refuse, and we will withdraw our offer permanently. But the terms are non-negotiable, Maya interjected, her voice firm. 11 months of research have documented a deeply rooted systemic problem. Today's incident was not an anomaly, it was an inevitability. You can be part of the solution, Charles, or you can remain part of the problem. A long silence stretched over the phone line as Charles Petty performed the rapid, brutal calculus of moral compromise, lose face by accepting the humiliating reforms, or lose his company by refusing the $540 million lifeline. We'll implement the protocol, he said finally, his voice heavy with defeat. Full compliance within 30 days. Victory. It tasted like chlorinated water, and sweet, sweet, vindicated dignity. Richard sagged against a poolside lounge chair, the full weight of his choices crashing down upon him. Mr. Thorne, is there any way? You enabled a physical assault, you prepared fraudulent termination papers, and you violated federal law, Marcus listed off clinically. There is no way. Security handed Richard the resignation paperwork Eleanor had already prepared. His 20-year career was over. His pension forfeited. His reputation destroyed. Isabella stood alone, watching her entire social world collapse in real time. Her phone was buzzing, but it wasn't with messages of support. It was canceled dinner invitations, withdrawn club memberships, deleted contacts. Wealth without character, she was learning, was as fragile as spun glass. This isn't over, she snarled at Maya. A final, impotent threat. People like me don't just go away quietly. Maya looked at her, not with anger, but with a kind of academic pity. Mrs. Vance, she said gently. People like you created the very system we are now dismantling. Your quiet departure is optional. Your irrelevance, however, is guaranteed. Chloe's livestream peaked at over 250,000 viewers as the corporate titans concluded their business. The comment section exploded with a mixture of celebration and outrage, a perfect microcosm of a divided nation. The board meeting was now officially in session. 6 weeks later, the Serenity Grand looked the same from the outside, but on the inside, everything had changed. Where Isabella Vance once lounged in her bubble of entitled splendor, diverse families now laughed and played, enjoying equal and respectful treatment. Where Richard Fleming's discriminatory policies had once festered like an open wound, the Thorne Protocol was creating a new culture of accountability and transparency. Dr. Maya Jordan stood in her new, spacious corner office, reviewing the first quarterly discrimination reports on her laptop. The numbers told a story of radical institutional transformation. 0 tolerance incidents reported. 0. Staff completion of the new bias training. 100%. Customer satisfaction scores among minority guests. Up 62%, a company record. A soft knock on her door interrupted her analysis. Elena entered, no longer in a housekeeper's uniform, but in the sharp business attire of her new role as Cultural Inclusion Coordinator. Dr. Jordan, the monthly staff survey results are in, Elena said, her English more confident after the company-funded language courses. Do you want the good news first, or the really good news? Maya smiled. Surprise me. Discrimination reports filed 0. Employee satisfaction index up 47%. Guest complaints about service quality down 60%. Elena beamed. It turns out when people feel respected, they do a better job. Through her window, Maya could see Miguel, now the resort's aquatics director, conducting a safety training for his new team. His promotion came with full tuition assistance for his master's degree in hospitality management. The Thorne Foundation Scholarship Program had already enrolled 17 other employees in continuing education courses. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Congressional hearing is tomorrow. Ready to change the world, Dr. Jordan? She typed back. Born ready, Mr. Thorne. The Senate Labor Committee had scheduled a special series of hearings based on her research findings. 11 months of quiet documentation were about to become the basis for new federal policy recommendations. Isabella Vance's poolside tantrum had inadvertently triggered a nationwide movement for reform in the hospitality industry. Eleanor knocked and entered, carrying a stack of legal documents. Dr. Jordan, the final settlement paperwork from Mrs. Vance's lawyers. She's agreed to all terms. Maya scanned the agreement. Isabella would complete 200 hours of community service, teaching racial sensitivity courses at a local community college. Her public, tearful apology, broadcast across all her social media platforms, had garnered 2.3 million views, most of which were comments celebrating her humiliation. How is she adapting to her new circumstances? Maya asked. Divorce proceedings began last month, Eleanor reported, her voice factual, not gloating. James Vance lost over 70% of his firm's client base after the Thorne account pulled out. Their mansion in La Jolla is in foreclosure. She paused. And Richard Fleming is unemployable in the hospitality industry. His LinkedIn profile says he's selling life insurance now. Eleanor hesitated. Do you ever feel bad for them? Maya considered the question, her eyes drifting to the families by the pool, laughing and splashing in the sun, utterly at ease. I feel sad that it took such a profound and public humiliation to teach them the basics of human decency, she said finally. But consequences aren't cruelty, Eleanor. They're education. The hotel's transformation was a ripple that became a wave. Thorne Global had implemented the protocol across all 847 of its properties worldwide. Other major hotel chains, terrified of facing their own viral incident, began to adopt similar standards. An entire industry was being forced to evolve. One lawsuit, one viral video, one brave employee at a time. Sarah Lane appeared in the doorway, her demeanor now humble but quietly determined. The once naive assistant manager had completed her intensive bias training with flying colors, earning her reinstatement as a guest relations specialist, reporting directly to Maya. Dr. Jordan, the new employee orientation group is ready for your presentation, Sarah said. 37 new hires, including 12 management trainees. Thank you, Sarah. How are you finding the new protocols? The younger woman's face brightened with genuine enthusiasm. Honestly, it's so much easier. Everyone knows the rules are real now. There's no more guessing which lines you can cross for a VP. Maya's presentation to new hires had become legendary throughout the company. She told her story. The research, the assault, the transformation, not for sympathy, but for education. Every single new employee, from the dishwashers to the future executives, understood from day one that at this company, discrimination had consequences, and human dignity had defenders. Her laptop chimed. An email from the Harvard Business Review. Dr. Jordan, we are pleased to inform you that your paper, Systemic Discrimination in Hospitality, an 11-month ethnographic study, has been accepted for publication in our upcoming special issue on workplace justice. Expected impact factor: significant. Potential for policy influence: substantial. The academic vindication was, she had to admit, sweeter than any personal revenge ever could be. Marcus arrived, interrupting her moment of quiet satisfaction. He was carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing the proud, satisfied expression of a man whose wife had just single-handedly reformed an entire industry. How's the conquering hero doing today? He asked, kissing her cheek. Tired, fulfilled, and ready for tomorrow's testimony, she said, gratefully accepting the coffee. Any regrets about the $500 million acquisition? Best investment we ever made, he said without hesitation. This hotel's performance is already exceeding all projections, and you've created a replicable, scalable model for institutional change. He gestured towards the window, where families of all colors and backgrounds coexisted in joyful, respectful harmony. Some victories are worth more than money. Her phone rang. It was a producer from CNN requesting another interview about discrimination in the hospitality industry. Her story had become a cultural touchstone for workplace justice, inspiring similar undercover investigations in retail, food service, and even tech. This is Dr. Jordan, she answered, her voice calm, professional, and full of power. She listened for a moment, then looked at Marcus and smiled. Yes, I would be happy to participate. But you should know, the story isn't really about me. It's about the moment that systemic change became systematically possible. Your voice matters. Your story has power. Your experience can change the world. Have you ever faced a situation like Maya's? Share your story of workplace discrimination in the comments below. We need to hear it. Tag someone who needs to see the proof that justice is possible, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories of quiet triumph over loud prejudice. Remember, sometimes the most powerful response isn't the angriest one, it's the most documented one. Turn your pain into data. Transform your experience into evidence. Make your story the catalyst for systemic change.